etc.
Thrill me.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Horror Flicks and Guitar Picks podcast. I'm your host, Tim, and today I'm joined by the one and only Dusty Gannon of the band Vision Video. How's it going, man? Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, Tim. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. I'm just staying busy as always. I feel like I never really truly know what I'm doing. So I just like running around like a headless chicken right now, but doing very well. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel you. Like you said, you're getting ready for a tour, which by the time this comes out, you guys will probably be already on the road and everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah. We're doing like a week in Florida next week, and then we come back for the rest of March. But then we do sort of our West Coast run out to California and the Pacific Northwest and back. So it's not terrible. It's like 3 weeks. And I mean, obviously, touring is a lot of fun, but it's just like a lot of work. And being gone that long can be a little stressful. So it's like you got to take the good with the bad. But I'm always excited for it because, like I said, it's the best part of being a musician is going on tour and actually doing the thing.
yeah. And of course, other than dealing with a little bit of rain, you're picking the perfect time of year as far as like temperatures and weather and stuff. So,
Yeah, barring any like wackiness in like the Rockies, like that's the only thing that could really throw you for a loop around this time of the year is like getting through the Rockies is like if as long as there's no snow, we'll be fine. But we've definitely been like coming back from like the Pacific Northwest through say like Denver, and like one time we were driving through a blizzard in the middle of the night and it was just like this is this is pretty hairy, you know. It felt like just so desolate, and it was like we're not going to make it, we're just not going to make it to this, but we ended up making it, so that's good.
oh, yeah. And of course, we can dive right into the horror movie stuff. Pretty much my first question with that is, what was your relationship with horror movies growing up, and did it change at all as you got older and became an adult?
Yes, that's a great question. So you know, I think the first like real deeply hooking like the first horror movie that hooked me was Pet Cemetery,
Oh,
by Mary Lambert's Pet Cemetery as by Stephen King. And that was just because like when I was a kid, I mean, I watched horror movies before that and I enjoyed them, but that was probably the first like horror movie that I wasn't supposed to be watching at that age because I was about 8 and no 8-year-old should ever watch that movie. And I just sort of snuck into the living room while my dad and my sister were watching it. And I remember being really scared, like genuinely terrified, but also just really drawn to continue to watch it and just was fascinated with it. So I think that was like kind of the first one that really got me. And that sort of opened a door, you know, into understanding that kind of film was for me. And then I got really into like the Romero, like I'm actually wearing my Dawn of the Dead Dawn of the Dead shirt from Pallbearer Press today. But
oh,
like
yeah.
I got really into Romero and the original trilogy of the Dead films, because especially back then, you know, like if you think about zombie movies, like before Walking Dead and before it kind of got overdone, I feel like it was like zombie films to me when I was a kid were like there was just like really obscene sort of weird preciousness to those movies because they weren't for everybody and not a lot of people knew about those movies. And again, it was just like they're really over the top, they're really violent, but there was like some deeper meaning to it. You could tell, like even when I was a preteen or a teenager watching those movies, I was like, oh, there's a lot more being said about society and people in these movies than just like, oh, here are monsters and we need to destroy them or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was probably my like one of my biggest obsessions with horror was the Dead series. But yeah, I mean, you know, as I've gotten older, it's definitely changed, especially for me as an individual, because you know I've been through some like really actually awful, horrifying things, and
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of really atrocious, horrifying things happen firsthand. And like to me, it's now like there has to be more like meat and potatoes behind what you see in the horror film. Like I don't enjoy you're just like straight up slasher for the sake of blood and gore. I mean, I can
Yeah.
appreciate the art form, and I appreciate like the artistry that goes into, say, for example, the gags and the SFX. Uh, all that stuff is really cool to me still, but I find myself enjoying stuff that's a little headier now. Uh, but I mean, I don't know. I at the same right, while I say that, I mean, I still love like Friday the 13th series and stuff like that. I don't know. I just feel like most of the time I've just become much more critical of horror films now, I guess. But I think that's just something that happens with age too.
Yeah.
So, but I still love it, and I watch horror films almost every single day. So
Oh yeah.
it's still an obsession for sure.
No, I'm sort of similar. I do enjoy the like turn your brain off horror films still. Like I'll watch like the Terrifier films and stuff.
Yeah,
But if it's supposed to take itself seriously, I like really dive deep into those and like really nitpick it myself. You know what I mean? Like
right.
if it's taking itself serious, it needs to be serious and have like really hit the nail on the head with it, you know? So
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's like movies that do a good job at playing with both. Like one that comes to mind immediately as a recent film is The Substance.
yeah.
That like it's so over the top and like it's such crazy body horror, but obviously there's a very like deeply rooted message about like body image and aging and like celebrity fascination and obsession and shit like that. Like there's so much below the surface of just like look at these crazy monsters, you know. And I mean it's like pretty obvious in that movie, but I felt like that was a movie that really nailed nailed it. Was like having really intense visuals and special effects gags, but also having like a really cool undercut meaning, that and I think they balanced that really well.
Oh yeah. No, I agree 100%. That was probably my favorite film of last year, like hands down. And
Yeah,
I think one thing that makes that special and like kind of like, lives inside the world with like it's compared to Cronenberg a lot is because it establishes that like over the top world early on. So you
yeah,
already know what world you're living in. So when this like stuff happens that's over the top, like you said, but still has a meaning behind it, you're willing to like still kind of take it with that like meaning and seriousness, even though it is kind of goofy at times, just
right,
because like you're already like buying into the world. It's not like one of these movies that has an hour and a half build up and then the last like 30 minutes is when everything just goes nuts and crazy. Like
right.
you know right from the top that this kind of stuff is like over the like they're kicking Demi Moore off and like the way he's like eating
Hmm.
shrimp and like
Right.
uh like
Which is probably the most horrific scene of that movie is
yeah.
Dennis Quaid eating shrimp. It's like, oh God. Like my partner Scarlett was there in the theater with me, and she and I both just looked at each other and were like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. And then there's like all the gore and stuff. You're like, yeah, okay, that's like crazy as well. But the shrimp scene is like the worst.
Right. No, especially I have that I think it's called agoraphobia. I might be wrong on that, but the one where like chewing sounds like bother you, and I'm surprised that that scene doesn't bother me more. Like as far as that goes, because like if somebody's chewing loud, it really does get to me sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But which is crazy. I have a 4-year-old, and it doesn't bother me at all when he's just smacking away. But uh,
Right.
but no, hell yeah, and of course you mentioned a few movies, but of course of the Dead, being one that you hold near and dear. Do you have any other favorites? And would you say that's your favorite of all time, or do you have another one that's a favorite of all time?
I mean, my go-to like number one horror movie, like, and I feel like I have different movies for different moods, but I mean, if as a generalization with a cross genre generalization, I always go to Return of the Living Dead because it's just such a like all-encompassing horror film to me. It has like your iconic, people like the actors are iconic in that movie. Linnea Quigley, I mean, it's there's just such a really incredible lineup of really phenomenal character actors in that movie, and then like it's got really amazing special effects, makeup, and gags. The Tarman zombie is iconic. It has really like intense, scary moments. Where and if you like were a person in that era coming from the Dead series watching that movie, like I mean, I remember watching that for the first time and being like, oh, they can't kill the zombies.
Yeah.
Like, and that was like a oh shit moment because that was just sort of like part of the milieu of zombies. Like you shoot them in the head, they're dead. And they even like it's self-referential to those films, like, where he's like, hey, remember that movie Night of the Living Dead? Well, it actually happened. And and I thought that that was really clever. And like, it's got a really amazing soundtrack. It's just like an iconic horror film soundtrack. Like the Cramps wrote a song for that movie. 45 Grave like kind of rewrote a song for that movie, Party Time. And it's like, I just feel like it captures like a little bit of everything that I love about horror, and it does it damn near perfectly. That's a movie I can pretty much watch in any mood at any time, and it's always an enjoyable thing. And I always like notice one tiny little stupid detail that's not like blatantly obvious or even important to the plot or anything. It's just like, oh, that's funny. I never noticed that. Yeah. So, I think that that's like my all-time favorite is Return of the Living Dead for sure.
Hell yeah. No, that's definitely up there in my top five for sure. I love that movie. Like you said, it's got one of the best soundtracks. It's probably one of the most punk rock horror movies, if not the most punk rock horror movie of all time. Uh,
Yeah.
and then like it does a good job of balancing the camp with just like the characters being slightly over the top, but still being like a perfect balance of like enough that their relationships between each other make you really like enjoy them and like them on screen. So you kind of
Yeah.
don't really want them to die like you do in some, slasher films and
Exactly.
stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
and then of course, then it also has like darkness to it though, like when they're like suffering from rigor mortis while still alive. And then
Yeah.
of course the I can feel myself rot scene is one of my favorites, where it's just the half
Right.
corpse talking about like pretty much how you find out like the whole lore was created about the brains thing came from
Right.
Tarman saying it, but you hear the lore that the reason they eat brains is because it like their body hurts pretty much, so they're like
Yeah.
eating to stay from hurting and stuff, which is so sad and like in the middle
Right.
of this like super goofy movie. So no, I'm with you. It has like all the elements that you want in horror, it's, like jam packed into one just super fun movie. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, I feel like it's a perfectly paced film. You're never like kind of just sitting there like, okay, what's going to happen? It's like, it's sort of relentless. But it also gives you time to breathe here and there. Like, you're not just like constantly in this like zombie fight, which I think is important for a zombie film, especially. It has to have like, so it has to have sort of ebb and flow to the action and what's actually happening on screen. But yeah, and it's just like one of the things I found really interesting is I read a long time ago that back when they first got, were getting into pre-production, they did like several table reads of the script with the whole cast. And that's like, especially for the 80s, that was like pretty rare for like kind of a, lower budget horror film. They don't have a lot of time, they don't have a lot of money,
yeah.
and time is always a consideration on any set. So but they actually managed to do like a few table reads, and I think that really helped bring that sort of organic nature to the acting. Like you said, you don't want them to die because it feels like they're actually friends, and the writing of the characters is just so good. Like, Suicide and Trash are like such like the iconic sort of alt punk goth couple, and I love like Suicide, he's such a funny guy because he, at face value, he's just sort of like this, you know, typical bruiser punk thug. But
Yeah.
he's like, no, like this is people think this is a fucking costume. No, it's a way of life. Like I love that he's like a little higher minded about being a punk rocker and like, and then he's like, have some fucking respect for the dead because Linnea Quigley's like naked, trash. She's all trying to get him to make out and shit. And he's just like, he has these higher minded ideas. And I love it when movies give you insights into character without giving you like just telling you who they are. Like they show you who they are, they don't tell you. And I think that's a really that's a lost art in a lot of film. We always get like so much exposition in every movie now that it's like I just want to be immersed in a world and learn from it by inference. Like I want to see it and experience it and make my own realizations about that universe and that world by just seeing it and experiencing it, not being told like the year is so and so and zombies are now everywhere. And it's just like it's so obvious. And I don't know. I like a little bit of subtlety, even if
Yeah.
it's over the top.
Yeah. No, like you said that at the beginning where they're making comments about like, I thought that was just a movie, and he's like, no, that's really happened. Blah, blah, blah. Like those little subtle things that let you know that like, okay, well, we can use that lore, going
Right.
forward a little bit. So, no, hell
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's like a lot of really like undercut commentary about like America in that movie. Like I love like when he in that same scene where he's like, they got him down in these barrels in the basement. He's like typical army fuck up, like the army accidentally lost like one of the most hazardous biological weapons in the world, and it just ended up at this like medical supply store. Like it's just because that is exactly what would probably happen. Like some private in the army would be like, oh shit, hey lieutenant, we lost this barrel, I don't know where it is, and they would just be like, well, we just got to make some bullshit, and like and it would just be covered up.
Yeah.
And so I love those little moments in that movie. It just feels it feels like a real world because of those moments.
No doubt. Especially when he's like, you better do it if you care about this job, kid. He's like, care
Right.
about this job.
Job.
Sorry, I bit my tongue.
Exactly.
No, I was just like, what the? I felt that, especially sometimes at work when the stuff they ask you, you're like, I don't know if that's worth it to me. Like,
Yeah. Every single person that's worked for like a major corporation has been asked or told to do some dumb thing. And you're like, what am I doing here? So that, yeah, it really like amplifies that to extremis, which I love.
oh yeah. No, and then of course on the back half I have, or the back end of the show, I have like a few hypothetical questions that mix the music and movies. Before I jump into that, do you have any other movies that you want to shout out as favorites? And of course, if they don't have to be favorites of all time, but if it's even something that you've just seen in recent years that you really enjoyed that stuck with you.
Yeah. So more recent stuff. I really absolutely enjoyed the Nosferatu reboot
Oh yeah,
remake. I thought it was incredibly beautifully shot, well acted. It's just every single shot in that movie is like a cinematographer's dream. It's just so well constructed.
yeah.
Willem Dafoe is incredible in that film. I mean, just yeah, there you go. um, yeah, I just fully immersed myself in that world, and that's the and I knew it was really good because that kind of gothic style of horror like is not usually my bag. I'm more of a like, Return to the Living Dead, punk rock, crazy, over the top body horror guy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just super love that. I mean, I would call it, I would put it in the realm of horror. It's like peripheral maybe, but I fucking loved Companion.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know if you saw that. That movie blew my mind how good it was. I thought it was very relevant. The social commentary. Sophie Thatcher is just incredible in that movie.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I thought it was a really interesting social commentary on, what we'll do for money, and then also like the use of AI, and like sort of sentience, and what is conducive to sentience, and what does that mean. So anyway, just loved that. But those are the two recent ones that I really enjoyed. And another recent one, Wolfman, was a surprisingly good movie.
Oh yeah.
It's a little slow at moments, and there's some plot points that I thought didn't quite make sense, but overall, like a really interesting take on like Wolfman as a body horror, sort of biological
Yeah.
entity thing. I thought that was just super clever and very well acted, and the SFX again were really fantastic. But yeah, as far as like favorites, I'm really bad. As it turns out, I'm really super bad at listing stuff. But like I always have to shout out Alien and Aliens. I can
Oh yeah.
never tell which one I like better. Because Alien being the like haunted house in space, basically, and Aliens being more of a sci-fi action movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sigourney Weaver and James Cameron are just it's just like such a incredible, and I guess Ridley Scott, incredible group of people making just phenomenal art. And I try to like remember especially with Alien. When I watched that movie, nothing like that had been done before.
Yeah.
Like nobody, I so badly wish I could be in a theater in like 79 or whenever that came. I think it's 79 when that came out,
Yeah.
and just like watch people's reaction, because people must have been like fucking terrified, because that is a scary movie. Like the scene where Dallas is like in the vent with the flamethrower in the first one, and it's then they're like telling him that the xenomorph is like coming for him.
Yeah.
Like that's terrifying, and like the rogue android is terrifying.
The chest
Um,
burster, like seeing it.
yeah, yeah, and apparently, like when they shot that scene, they didn't tell the cast that there was going to be this huge blood explosion. So they're actually kind of genuinely reacting to
Yeah.
Kane's exploding chest, which I thought was really cool. I also really, really like the fact that uh, Parker, the character, the femme presenting character, is actually a trans man,
Yeah.
and they list that in the dossier that's scrolling by in Aliens in the beginning of the movie when Ripley's telling the corporate goons about what happened and giving her debrief. There, it actually says like trans man essentially,
Oh yeah.
which, and they never really use gender based pronouns in the first movie because they're in a military or like a sort of maritime, environment, which uses, lieutenant. They use rank and title and name instead of like pronouns a lot, like gender-based pronouns. So I thought that was a really like insanely progressive thing that they did in the 80s. I was like, Jesus, like that's so cool to me.
Oh yeah.
Which is, bizarre that it's like now like you can like show that to people and they get really upset about it, which is so stupid to me. But anyway, yeah, I really love that whole world because it's like I feel like, before we had the Alien franchise, space was kind of a very slick, super hyper futuristic. Everything is like shiny chrome and whatever. And that made it like gritty and real. Like that,
Yeah.
along with kind of the Star Wars movies, it was like more lived in and it felt like, oh, this is like what would actually happen. Um, and just, yeah, Sigourney Weaver just being an absolute badass. And I love the fact that she's a badass, like not it's she's just a badass in and of herself. Like they don't draw attention to like oh she's a woman. Like she's just a badass. And
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes to the fact that women can be really strong, and it doesn't need to be like this put upon like tropey thing, so anyway, I just I love that movie so much. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like other things that I have been obsessed with though, like throughout my life. Yeah, I'm just it's just so many. Like I could literally talk about it all day. Oh, like I mean, and this is like an obvious one, but like The Lost Boys
Oh yeah.
is like a very clear influence on like me. I think that movie like was a gateway drug for me to get into like goth stuff.
Yeah.
Even though there's not a lot of like goth music per se in that movie, there's a little bit, but there's like that world just like blew open those doors to this like this kind of subcultural viewpoint that I am still obsessed with today. So yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I love Lost Boys. I always tell people that was probably one of my first horror movies, as well as like Pet Cemetery and stuff. And then because my mom was a big Stephen King fan when I was
Mm.
growing up, so she got me to that stuff. But Lost Boys was one of those that was probably my gateway into horror because it was scary, but only like certain scenes. Like the only scene that really scared me was when they attacked the punks around the fire. Because I was
Right.
scared of horror movies growing up, so that was only the scene I had to like hide my
Yeah.
eyes. But no, I love that
Yeah, I
one.
mean that's such an effective scene because the rest of it is kind of like based in levity, and there's not like a lot of gore or like over the top violence. It's very like you don't really see a lot, and you actually don't even really see the vampires
Yeah,
until that moment, like fully out in the open. And because of that, because it's that one of the only scenes where there's like really intense blood and arterial spray and glowing eyes and shit like that, like it makes it so much more effective because you're like, holy shit, like these are killing machines. These aren't just like party boys on the beach. They are straight up vampires, and they are like their prime directive is to feast on human blood.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's a rad movie. So
Oh, yeah.
and then and you get the Frog Brothers, which is just like
Right.
such an iconic, ridiculous duo. I love that. It's so much fun. Every time I watch that movie, I love every single scene that they're in. It's so fun.
Oh yeah. And then of course one of the best quotes of all time, "Death by stereo."
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
that's one of my
Oh
favorites.
yeah.
But
Death by stereo.
Yeah.
oh yeah. But and like I said at the towards the end of the show, I like to ask a few questions that are hypothetical and mix the music and movies. And of course, you do a ton of awesome music videos that are very thematic already and have like gothic or sometimes horror based themes and stuff. If
Yeah.
somebody approached you with, of course, budget not being an issue because of the fact it's hypothetical, and they wanted you to remake one of your favorite horror movies for your next music video, just kind of into a short film version for a video, which horror film would you choose, and how would you do it into a music video featuring you and the crew?
Yeah, I mean, not to be like too on the nose, but it would definitely be like Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah.
Just I think like just the level of ridiculousness of like zombies coming out of graves is so much fun to me. I don't know what it is, but it nails this old school nostalgia thing for me. Uh, because like if you think about an actual zombie apocalypse, like it would be like a biological pathogen that transfers from person to person or from like bites. It wouldn't be like people coming out of graves, like deteriorated corpses or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would love to play with that concept of like, you know, sort of graves bursting open and them crawling from tombs in the ground and just make it like super over the top and ridiculous and like not too much like self-seriousness with it. Like when we did the video for In My Side, there's a little bit of camp in it, but it's mostly like very like intense, really really solid special effects makeup, especially. Whereas I would want to do something that's a little bit more like on the camp side, just to have fun with that. But I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be really fun to also do something that is like straight up haunted house, like supernatural, paranormal, ghosts. I do love a good ghost movie, so
Oh yeah.
something that's really like ethereal and gauzy and dreamy would be really cool too.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. No, and that would be both would be fun and of course would fit the music styles in different ways, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
oh yeah. And then of course there's only two hypothetical questions before I ask one question that I ask all my guests at the end, and then of course give you room to promote and let people know where to find you and stuff. But
Sure.
the second hypothetical question is if somebody wanted you to score a horror movie and you got to pick the subgenre, which type of horror movie would you choose to score as far as subgenre? Would you want to do, like a supernatural type thing, or maybe even like a sci-fi type thing like Alien, or go straight slasher, even though I know you said you
Yeah.
don't prefer those as far as the modern ones go and stuff, but
Yeah. No, I feel like, I mean, me as a musician, like I would be best suited for something like a slasher or like like retro futurist sci-fi horror thing would be really cool.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be, just because like most of what I write is like very, I pretty much exclusively use like synthesizers from the 80s. I use like Junos and the Jupiters and it's all like that old school vintage sound of synthesis. And then I mean, I just everything under the sun is a replication of something else. So I mean, most of what I do as a guitarist and a vocalist is just like sort of repurposed from stuff from the 80s. So I feel like it would be best suited for something like that.
Oh yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. Like even like something like a Turbo Kid or a Psycho Gorman or something. I don't know if you saw either of those,
Yeah.
but
Oh, I love both of them. Yeah, they're great movies.
hell yeah. No, and then pretty much anything that crew does is pretty fun. So
Right.
and then
And if you are a producer of film out there listening to this, I am available for that. I will absolutely do that. I would love to do that, honestly.
oh yeah. No, definitely put out any word that I know for sure. But and then the last question I like to ask all my guests, and of course you mentioned some stuff earlier, but you don't have to go any deeper than you want to on the podcast, but do you have a horror story of your own? And of course, it could be something that was shitty that happened in your personal life, a day that was on tour that just went wrong, or if you believe in the paranormal and have, any experiences in that, you're more than welcome to share those as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I do have a good ghost story from when I was a kid. So my aunt and uncle live in this very, very old farmhouse up in New Hampshire. And it's like literally built in I think it's at the end of the 1700s is when it was originally built. And it's been sort of renovated and rebuilt. But the core structure is very, very old. And many people have lived there and died there. And there was this little girl who died there named Hattie. And at one point, they were doing renovations of the basement, which was the original basement. And they found all these boards with her name on it. And they decided in their wisdom to put one of those boards with her name and all of her scribblings above the mantelpiece of a fireplace
Oh shit.
in the living room. And one year when I was about 12 years old, I was staying, like our whole family was there for Christmas, I believe. And because of that, there were no bedrooms left. So I was sleeping in the living room on the couch because I was smaller and it was a huge couch. So in the middle of the night, and who knows what the reality of this was, but I woke up from being dead asleep to being wide awake, like jarringly so, and was like, what? Like almost like somebody had woken me up.
Yeah.
And it was pitch black. And you could just kind of make out some of the shapes of the room. But a little girl wearing a dress walked into that room clear as day, looked at me, started moving towards me, and I started screaming bloody fucking murder. And my aunt and uncle in the next room came running in, turned on the light. There was nothing there.
Holy shit.
And I was like, what? Is there somebody else here? Like, there was a little girl in this room, and they were like, you're just seeing things. I'm like, no fucking chance. I was wide awake. They were like, you must have been dreaming. I was like, no, it was right there. And the next day, I was in the room adjacent to that room. There was like kind of a games room where they had a bunch of board games and toys and stuff. And I was just like kind of hanging out there just on my own. And I heard walking down the steps from the room that my aunt and uncle were in, because it's kind of, there's like a small staircase. And then it stopped. And the door to that room slowly started to close, and then there was like a pull string light bulb that was like hanging on a cord, and it just exploded. And I fucking got out of there. I was like, nope. And I don't know that I have honestly, I've been back there once as an adult, and the whole time I was like on edge. I was like, this, I don't know how I feel about this. So that place freaked me the fuck out.
Shit, that's fucking crazy. I definitely would have been ripping that board out the next morning after being visited.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't get the sense that I'm not sure that I believe in like ghosts as a spirit, but I think that when bad things happen, or good things even, or anything happens, we live in this like maybe multiverse where time is, as they say in True Detective, time is a flat circle.
Yeah.
And it's like we exist and occupy the same space as what happened 100 years ago and what's to happen 100 years from our perception. It's all in the same permeable world. And I think sometimes like we get glimpses into those worlds.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's like, oh, there's a spirit haunting, but I maybe that's what that was, or maybe I was just seeing shit. I mean, I was 12, 12-year-olds have active imaginations. So, but I mean, I'm not the only one that's been in that house that like feels like there's somebody there.
Yeah.
Like everybody that goes there is like, yeah, it feels like when you're alone, it feels like somebody's with you, which is bizarre. So who knows? I love the mystery though. I love the mystery.
Right. Hell yeah. No, it definitely makes it even more of a reason to go back. Well, not to go back as often, but when you go back, it gives you a little bit of extra excitement when you're there. So-
Exactly, exactly.
Oh yeah. Thank you for sharing. And do you want to let people know, if you have anything coming up with Vision Video in the second half of the year, or with or if you have any other projects you want to shout out, and then of course if
Yeah,
you want to just let them know where to find you as well while doing that.
yeah, I have tons of stuff to actually talk about. So we have
Nice.
lots of tour dates. Like we're going to Florida next week, so that's the first week of March. It's just like 5 or 6 shows, and then in April we'll be going out to the West Coast. So basically from Georgia through sort of the lower Midwest up into California, Pacific Northwest, and back. So there's like probably about 25 shows or so in that run, and that's the majority of April. In June and July, we'll be hitting the UK. And then in September, like mid September to early October, we'll be in the East Coast and the Midwest.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of those dates are forthcoming. I'm also working on a horror novel myself. It starts out as sort of a military aspect in the near future. It takes place in the country of Bosnia, and so there's like a reignition of the conflict that happened in the 90s there, and this U.S. soldier through the UN gets sent there as a peacekeeper, and this paranormal entity follows him home, and it's this like shape shifting creature that's hell bent on destroying his life. So I'm working on that, and I'm hoping to have that finished by the summer, and then hopefully I'm either going to suss that out to publishers or I'm just going to self-publish it because whatever, if nobody says yes, you just do it yourself.
Oh yeah.
So that I'm really excited about that though. I spent a month this year, like we came back from the UK in December, and I spent basically late December through all of January researching the conflict in the 90s and the history of the Balkans, like going all the way back to the Middle Ages and beyond. So I'm trying to have a very comprehensive view of that area of the world. I don't want to culturally appropriate anything. I want to get it
Yeah.
right. To that point, I've been to Sarajevo once, but I'm going back this year to just do a little bit of like firsthand research,
Yeah.
just to be immersed in the culture and to talk to people and understand it a little better again.
Oh yeah.
So that's exciting. And then I guess the last thing is, Vision Video has some music releases upcoming. We have some really cool songs that I'm working on right now and finishing up. We've already recorded one. It's just getting mixed and mastered and all that jazz. But I'm actually going to start a side project. I hate to call it a side project because it's sort of like diminishing, but I have another project that I will be working on musically that is in the same vein as Vision Video. It's a little heavier. It's a little more rock based. It's not. It's sort of. In the same way that Vision Video is very multi genre. It's not just goth. It's not just post punk. It's not just pop. It's got a
Yeah.
little bit of everything, but I'd say it's a little more like guitar driven. It's a little more on the nose of like Bauhaus and the early goth punk milieu. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm just trying to distract myself from the atrocities of what's happening in this world and in this country, with art and music and community, and it seems to be working out okay. So,
No,
but
hell
yeah,
yeah.
and you can find all of our stuff. The best way to find everything is sort of our hub, which is just visionvideoband.com. You got links to my TikTok, my Instagram, to the Spotify for music, for our YouTube for our music videos. We have merch there. We have ticket links for, if you want to come see us live. Yeah, visionvideoband.com is the best place to go.
Oh yeah. And I'm looking forward to all that. The between the novel and then, music from Vision Video as well as the new project.
Hell
So
yeah. Well,
and then
thanks, Tim. I appreciate it.
of course, and I'll make sure to put the link, to the hub, to the main website in the description as well of the episode. But and of course, if you're listening, make sure you like, subscribe, or leave a rating depending on where you're listening, and then go follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Horrorflix and Guitar Picks Pod. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for joining me, Dusty. It was a blast chatting with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. We'll do it again
Oh,
sometime.
yeah.
Just have me back. I could talk about this stuff literally all day.
No, definitely. I usually have guests come back on and let them pick a topic, and if it's their second time, we'll definitely run through like their favorite horror sequels real quick at the start and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
we
No,
can
that
definitely do
sounds
that down the
great.
road.
Yeah,
Oh
let's
yeah.
do it. Awesome. Thanks again.